back here. I got some pigments that we're going to be using here. These are Pearl X pigments. They're these powders, and we can use these along with a medium to create these really nice pearly effects or iridescent effects. This one here will change from red to blue, so I like to use these to create an effect on the wings, and we'll show how that's done here. There's a rose gold, duo red blue, duo violet brass, and this is mink. Alright, now to transfer these powders to the palette, I'm just going to use a little X-Acto knife here and get some of that on my X-Acto knife. I'm actually going to make quite a bit on the palette because this wing is pretty big. But if you have a smaller project, you don't want to use too much powder. A little bit of powder does go a long way. Probably I'm not going to use too much of this purple gold. It can be kind of hard to get that powder out. There we go. And I get space them out a little bit on the palette. And that will give you some space to blend kind of mixtures of the different powders together. This is a nicely ground powder. I really like how finely ground this brand is. I recommend it for sure. Pearl X Pigments, that's the brand we're using here. The rose gold, that's a nice color. Make sure you wipe off all the instruments and keep these powders under control. If you get the powders on your hands, make sure you wash those off before handling models, especially finished models. You can leave little sparkly fingerprints on things, and just not fun. But as long as you're careful, that shouldn't happen. So let's get these all stowed away here. Now you don't want to use these powders just by themselves. We need to mix them with a medium so they'll be able to stick to the model. And for this particular application, we're going to be using a gloss medium, a Liquitex gloss medium. So for doing the iridescent feathers, you really want to use gloss. We're going to add a little bit of medium to each of these piles. And using an old brush roll, we're going to mix them up. Just keep it localized though. We don't want to make a really big area of this. Just keep it local. I'm going to kind of brush a little bit out here. We'll see why here in a second. Wash your brush out thoroughly between each mixture. That's a really cool color. It's hard to tell quite what color that is. Maybe mix a little bit together. Mink. That should give us a lot of variety to choose from. And a large body of paint to use. Now the nice thing about mixing with the gloss medium is that your paint's going to be a little translucent, and that's going to allow our sketch to show through, and will give us the effect. Alright, now we've got the camera set up to check out these feathers on the Lord Change wing, and we're going to add the iridescent effects to these. Now, I think what a lot of people would have done maybe first would have maybe to paint the iridescent effect on first as a base coat, but we have our sketch here, and what that's going to do is the sketch is going to show our highlights and shadows, and that's going to shine through the layer of effects that we're going to paint on here, and that way our eye won't be quite as confused by all the iridescence going on. It's still going to look really nice and shiny and everything, of course, but we're also going to be able to have highlights and shadows, which you normally couldn't do with the iridescent paint. So that's why the sketch is just so vital when painting this iridescent effect. And when you mix the powders with our gloss medium, the paint gets really translucent, so the sketch should show through really quite nicely. And we're going to wet blend this. Sorry, I kind of did a little mess up there. Let's give it another shot here. I got my brushes crossed. Okay. So we're going to be moving quickly, doing some wet blending. And so we're just going to apply a lot of paint here to the model. You want to have a lot of paint to blend with. So this is the duo red to blue, and we're going to be painting this just at the base of all of these large feathers. Yeah, just paint a lot of that in there. Do as many feathers at a time that as you're comfortable with. I want these fading towards like kind of the rose gold, so we're going to put the rose gold at the end of the feather. We're going to push these two together a little bit. Now it might start to pool down crevices and that sort of thing. We don't want that. So just move quickly and brush it away. If you apply a lot of paint, it takes longer for it to dry, and that's going to allow us to wet blend more easily. So just apply a lot of paint. That's really important. And just push those two piles of paint together. what I usually do is I'll pull the paint and push them together kind of with these feathering motions of the brush. And I'll feather in the opposite direction. So kind of come down here, push that paint together along the length of the feather, and then wipe the brush off so it's dry again, and then brush lines in and blend it in the other direction. Just keep moving, revisiting all of the different spots with a wet brush from time to time, and we can continue to blend. I'm going to get down into some of this purple gold area. I'm going to mix up a little bit more than that, actually. Just going to do that really quick before my paint dries. Yes, no problem. Let's put that up in here. I just wanted that purple gold. It's really adding these sheens. You can get a whole variety of effects if you just wet blend them together. And all the highlights and shadows and texture is created by the sketch. You control how translucent that paint is by just how much paint is applied. I mean, this is metallic sort of paint, so it's already pretty translucent, and that sketch should be showing through really nice and boldly. These areas where the paint has pooled, we want to kind of come in with our brush and pick some of that paint back up and dry our brush off again and kind of come back again. Just making sure that you're just tinting the area, not letting the paint pool too much. We are going to have to do a cleanup stage, but as you can see, it doesn't actually take all that long to paint these gigantic surfaces. You know, it doesn't take all that long to paint these gigantic surfaces if we just use the right technique. And the wet blending technique is a great way to do it. It's not the only way. An airbrush would also work very well. And you could use it in concert with the sketch as well. So that's another option. If you're more familiar with the airbrush, if you like that airbrush, you're probably already thinking about how you could spray a translucent layer of these iridescent colors through the airbrush. Just mix the powders with an airbrush medium. I would actually recommend an airbrush medium, not an airbrush thinner. They're kind of two different things, and these powders need a medium. The thinner is just for thinning actual paints that were not intended for the airbrush, whereas a airbrush medium is more suited to taking powders or dyes and making it into an airbrushable mixture. So there are two different things, and if you're going to airbrush the powders through your airbrush, you can do that if you mix it with an airbrush medium. Okay, now this whole area of feathers here, we're going to do them a little bit different. They're up in these lines of feathers. So each of these lines is going to be maybe a little bit different. I really want a good separation between these first level layers, so I thought I'd use some of this mink mixed with the purple. Yeah, I'm going to mix up a lot of that. With the gloss medium. I have this blue-green duo. I think I'm going to add some blue-green in. This is a Zinch model, so we can really go to town with all sorts of different colors, different effects. This is the paint that will change from blue to green, depending on what angle you're viewing the paint at. And it's pretty special, but it's even more special when we are wet blending it together with these other paints. So hopefully we'll get some neat mixtures. And really there's just an infinite amount of different ways you can do it. I never use the same mixtures twice. And it's just very versatile. Very versatile product. Alright, let's do these next lines of feathers. And I actually might do this area first. I know I want to have that area be the mink because it's kind of the darkest. So we're gonna paint that mink in there. Ooh. It's kind of like a purpley brown that goes up to a greenish color. Very strange paint. We're just gonna paint this whole area with a watered down sort of translucent layer. Just add a lot of paint in there because we're going to wet blend this, remember? So we want a lot of paint to work with. Really important to have enough paint on the model to wet blend. Can't stress that enough. Okay. Let's try a little bit of this purple gold. Mixed with a little bit of that blue. Yeah. Maybe see how that blends in. Yeah, mix in a little bit more of that blue. Ooh, yeah. That's pretty cool. I just follow the lines of those feathers. Kind of showing where that blue starts to come in. And then we can kind of just push them in and create a transition between the mink and the blue. Now I want to wipe my brush off and wipe it clean before I move on to the next area, the next line of feathers. Maybe this is more blue. Well, then we want it to blend in with the red-blue duo. Yeah, we can have that kind of coming in at the base of these feathers. It's really coming in there. That's pretty cool. All right, we need a lot of this paint. Let's get a lot of paint on there to work with, and that's going to keep it from drying quickly. Also give us a lot of paint to mix together. But realize how we're applying this, adding the paint in these distinct zones that we can start to push together rather than taking paint and applying it on top of a zone that already has wet paint. That's not how you wet blend. You want to have two distinct areas of color that you push together. I think Aaron did a nice video about the meet in the middle method. That's what he calls it. So you might check that video out for a little wet blending goodness. Right, so I'm just gonna push these paints together. I wipe my brush off and come in from the sides too to create our transition. You can see how we can see that sketch showing through, giving us the texture, and that's going to be a nice looking wing when we're done with it. I might maybe want to use some of this mink up in here. You can do that, maybe paint some smaller areas. Wow, that was fun. Hopefully you guys are enjoying watching these wet blended pearly weirdness going on here. I'm having a good time doing some quick wet blending, painting this huge area just all at once. Doesn't have to take forever to paint a giant area. Just gotta move quickly, use lots of paint, make sure you have a lot of paint.